So quickly, just to follow up, as I kind of filling out the gradebook, I figured I'd follow up with this just real quick here. I couldn't make a clear selection just because of the drop shadows, but just again, this is quick and rough, but this is your original. And on the background, all I did was I selected what I could quickly, inverted it, went to hue saturation, switched it back 180 degrees, and that switched the lights to darks and got us back color-wise. And then from here, what we'll do is lower the opacity, and this is what happens if it was darker. It's going to make the whole image darker. You would have to completely switch around the color contrast, but this is with regards to the color depth aspect of having these be darker. This come foreground. Of course, it changes the entire image, but with regards to color depth. Now, if you wanted to go to the center, that would be something entirely different as well. We can look at that. Let's see. Let's turn this one off. We got this one on. Let's go make a quick copy of it. Just make sure I have it just in case. Let's see. We want this to be dark. Let's start out here with just the centers. So obviously there you can just darken them, and this would be dropping back the centers rather than having the edges go back, having them overlapping, which is what I believe you have them kind of stacked with the smallest being on top. But this would be diminishing size. That would be the other part of the lecture we talked about. And here you could probably grab the shadows a little bit better. That wouldn't be as much of an issue. Just given some time. That would probably, obviously, some of these are going to be a little more challenging than others to grab. But you work this out to however you need it to be. And you could have gone this route, but again, that drop shadow would have probably been in the way, been something that had to have been either removed or changed. And hopefully, saving these. If you hadn't had a project like this, you may have learned at this point to kind of use, excuse me, there one time, use lots of layers and save the layers so that you can come back to them anytime changes need to be made during later steps. It makes things much easier. You may have noticed during revisions throughout the course, I tend to make a duplicate layer just so I have that layer to kind of go fall back to in case there's something I don't want. And so, just unfortunately, I think with the drop shadow, it doesn't really work as well having this coming forward and then having this. It's the tunnel effect is what you're kind of looking for there, looking down the tunnel. It works, I think, maybe best here and here. These more difficult shapes to grab and not as much. But I think with some time, it might have gone better, and that would have allowed you to include diminishing size. And then you would have had to think about the value contrast, and value contrast could have really been pushed in all four at that point. Just to expand on the comments about color depth, how diminishing size and the color related, basically design and color here. If there are questions, so let me know. We'll follow up with that. And then at that point, then you leave this foreground object, you know, higher in saturation. Try to keep it lighter in value when possible. Not always going to be possible. And then maybe depending on your colors, if you had switched them, maybe have some vibration going on. Really allow them to kind of stand out as focal points more. And that would also provide some contrast because it wouldn't have been value contrast with the vibration, and then there would have been value contrast here. So there would have been contrast that no value contrast, high value contrast, and as color relativity says, that makes these things kind of stand out more. But again, lots to consider, lots of things kind of interacting, especially with a pretty complex design like this. And just one last thing, since I had the time, I was kind of wondering about the directions of the lines. I know you kind of had them all going in the same direction. Uh, this would be if they were pointing together. The alternative would be if they were kind of framing squares. And this would have been more the squares, and that would have allowed another aspect of depth to build off of that kind of tunnel aspect if you'd have gone that direction, compared to the original, which unfortunately I've cut up at this point. Yeah, I would just need to go back to the original here. But just it was with those directional lines, there was some more to been done with them. But you did a lot with it, and just some additional suggestions to think about as you move forward in your